You're in the whole 6010. Fantasy Focus.
Hello and welcome to Fantasy Focus Football. My name is Daniel Dopp alongside Field Yates and Mike Clay for the first time here in 2025.
First of many.
On the other side of the new year. My friends, were you young enough to be able to make it to the ball drop? Because I went to bed at about 11:35 p.m. and didn't even watch it happen.
Wow. Yeah,
You want to answer
good.
first, Mike?
I made it.
Did you?
You should answer first because you.
Is water wet? Of course I didn't make it.
Wow.
Kidding me? Like
I'm
10,
the youngster
15,
around these
10,
parts.
15. We actually had friends, or we have friends who are in town from Massachusetts who have kids basically the exact same age as ours.
Mm-hmm.
And we had thought about it. We were like, we're going to do it. And we let the two older kids stay up a little bit. And then it was like 10, 15, maybe like a little after 10. And I looked up and I kind of saw like a little bit of fatigue in the eyes of every other adult. There were four of us in total. And I was like, I just have to do it. I was like, guys, is anybody going to judge me if I get up and go? And they were like, thank God someone said it. We're all waiting for it to happen. I know we're lame as hell. Judge us if you must. But it was actually crazy. I did get up. I did make it to 12:19 p.m. because for those of us that may live in Connecticut, like the three of us do, we had one of the most insane storms we have ever had. Truly, like some scary, scary thunder and lightning. Hopefully everybody in the area is okay. So I was up at 12:19. I just wasn't up at 12 midnight.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
I made it. My girls were weirdly, and they kind of have a relatively early bedtime, but they were full energy. Like they were up. They still had, just adrenaline after midnight. So
Yeah.
they were fine. They were like, all right, we starting the day now? Like after the ball drop?
You're like,
My 8-year-old, though, is the first time she made it, and she didn't really understand what was happening. And after it was like 12:04, and she's like, so is it the new year yet? It's like, we just watched the ball drop. That's new year. She didn't understand the whole concept that the ball drops and it goes to the new year. There was fireworks and everything. But you're right, you couldn't hear the local fireworks because that was just thunder.
Yeah, it was really crazy. It was scary.
Odd.
A lot of power outages, I'm sure. So hopefully everybody's okay locally here. But Happy New Year, everybody, 2025. Hope everybody had a very safe New Year. Obviously, we've been thinking about the devastating situation in New Orleans over the past 24 hours. No words for those kind of situations, really. We're not here to provide those words. We're really here to hopefully give you a reprieve if you're thinking about situations like that. And we are really, really grateful to have the opportunity to do this year ahead. I know that we're about to conclude this season of Fantasy Focus, but I am already hyped for 2025. And we'll give you a little snippet, a little preview of 2025 later on in the show, Daniel.
Heck yeah.
Do you guys remember, like, it had to be, I want to say, 3 weeks ago, maybe 20, 25 days ago, somewhere in that range, when we were like, welcome to week 1.
Yes,
right? Like,
it had
that was
to be
just
like
the other day.
Right? I know, it's insane.
And now we're at week 18. How did that happen?
I have no idea.
I feel like this is the fastest season in a long time.
Totally.
Just sped right by. But here we are.
Yep,
We're at it.
I agree.
Week 18.
Yeah. Did you guys have like a little bit of withdrawal this morning? We'll talk about fantasy in 13 seconds. But this morning, I get up with my kids quite early, and usually one of them decides to wake up early and the other one sleeps. It's a very weird dynamic they've chosen in this life. And I'll be downstairs and we'll be playing with whatever blocks or something. And all of a sudden I'll like open up my phone to check waivers, see how I did. This morning I was like,
where's that waiver report? Where's that report?
What happened? Yeah. I had some withdrawal this morning.
You don't wake up in panic like, oh no, I forgot to do my claims last night.
Yeah.
I got to be honest, I didn't miss having to go through 12 different teams. And
I
just
kind of
look
agree
and
with that.
Yeah, from that perspective.
Bittersweet, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be the way that week 18 feels. I don't think any of us specifically have leagues that go into week 18. Mike, we didn't. Okay, so we talked about it earlier this week. However, there are a lot of ESPN default leagues go into week 18, so we're going to give you as much information off the top of the show, biggest roster situations that you need to be aware of in order to set your lineup here in week 18, And with that, let's kick things off with the opening drive. I think the biggest one out of all these, and I feel so bad because this would have been so fun, Saquon Barkley, we got the news, is not going to play this week in week 18. He was only 110 yards, 101 yards.
101 yards away, yeah.
101 yards from Eric Dickerson's all-time single-season rushing record. And unfortunately, the Eagles just don't have anything to play for. So they're shutting down Saquon Barkley. if you have either Kenny Gainwell or Will Shipley, are they like guys you would go out and try and target, or would you go a different
Shipley out of
direction?
concussion protocol yet?
I don't know. He hasn't played in a couple weeks, so I'm not sure if he's playing. But also Tyrion Davis-Price there as well was up last week. So you could see a bunch of different guys, and that's why I would probably not
stay away.
Go that direction just because you don't know. Like last week in garbage time, they went to Davis-Price. From the old 49ers, what was he, a third rounder?
Yeah, I expect that, by the way, is that like Kenny Gainwell is the backup, the nominal backup to Saquon Barkley. He's also incredibly important to their roster.
Yeah.
He plays a lot in up-tempo situations. So it looks like, by the way, Will Shipley has not yet cleared concussion protocol, but he was a limited participant yesterday.
That's a heck of
I would
an
not
injury
be
report
surprised
right there if you're watching.
Yeah, I think we need to dig deeper sometimes than just like the number 2 on the depth chart in
no
these
doubt.
situations. So
That's how I project them. I kind of reverse it to the opposite. The bottom guy.
Yeah.
It's not like, for example, the Chiefs. Samaje Perine's like pushing 30 years old. He's probably not going to, and he has a role in passing situations in that offense. So does Kareem Hunt, and of course Isaiah Pacheco. So you go to someone like Carson Steele, way down the depth chart. He played early on in the year when everyone was hurt, but he's the guy that you would expect to get the bulk of the work. Guys will be activated from the practice squad. They're going to have role. Paris Campbell for Philly, for example. Like, he's not on their roster now. If you just look at the roster, you're not going to see him. He's on the practice squad. He'll probably get elevated and have a big role this week. So I'm with you, and that's what makes this kind of tricky sometimes. It helps when you have Sean McVay just come out and say the guys he's looking at. Cody Schrader and Blake Corum will get a long look in this game. But Corum's important, too, to the Rams. I mean, if Kyron gets nicked up in the first quarter of their playoff game, Blake Corum's going to push for 20 touches. You know what I mean? So I would not expect him to be a 20-touch guy in Week 18. Maybe he will be, but
Sean did suggest he was going to play a decent amount, Sean McVay, about Blake Corum. But then again, we'll see. I think everything is kind of wait-and-see mode. So as you guys know, usually when we're doing the show, the three of us, Wednesday, Thursday especially, it's like a fairly heavy, like, here's our rankings, here's the justification behind it. Today, I kind of came in, like, very much a blank slate in the sense that, like, I'm kind of categorizing players in would play them as normal, don't really know what to make of this situation, not touching them entirely. I'm sorry for the lack of nuance today, but even players in games that have 0 at stake, like the Colts are playing with the Jaguars this weekend, a game that means really nothing for either
There's very
squad.
few of those where both teams are out of the playoffs.
But you could, like, I don't expect Jonathan Taylor to be inactive, but if he opens up the game and the Colts have an effective first drive and he punches it in and has 27 yards and a rushing touchdown in the first drive, they might say, okay, you're good.
Good enough.
So anyways, I think it's important to remember it's one of the tricks of Week 18 fantasy football. It's the default setting for us. We're grateful for those that are still riding with us. But if you're used to the customary, hey, this guy's got, 4 more catches in 6 straight games and at least, 25 receiving yards in 6 of his last 7 games, like, you might not be getting quite as much of that today and for the rest of this week.
Yeah, I agree. Different. Yeah, the big storyline Week 18 is always who's resting, who's not. That's always big. And I think you guys talked about that a little yesterday, right? So
Tuesday. Yes, we were not here yesterday.
Oh, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Yeah, I'm just
Last year we talked about it.
Yeah,
last year
2020. Yeah, 2024.
The joke only plays
we'll
once,
talk
so
about that more.
It's done.
Yeah. So we have the 5 teams. If you missed that show, 5 teams expecting to rest, which of course are the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles, the Rams, and the Texans. So those players,
Texans will see. Yeah.
Mike actually listened to the podcast on Tuesday.
No, I've been doing the work.
Oh, okay, got it.
I've been studying all the reports
for that.
I got to throw an egg on my own face here because I thought the Rams would for sure play their guys. And I could be proven wrong. I told Stefania I'd be surprised, and she was like, I think they're going to be smarter about it. And 100% Stefania nailed that one. What else is new? But Stefania was right. They are going to rest their guys. My personal stance is that I'd rather try to go all out and win this week and potentially play the Commanders or Packers than lose because you're playing your backups, have the Buccaneers win, and then have the right to play the Vikings or the Lions in round 1. But maybe there's some methodology that I am missing here. And as Mike pointed out to me before the show, the mindset for the Rams might be, well, if you're going to make it all the way, you're going to have to beat good teams eventually.
Right.
So you're going to be tested, it would seem, if you're the Rams early on.
Yeah, I'm with you. And by the way, as it pertains to the Texans, like, sometimes when we say rest guys, it doesn't mean they're all inactive. It could mean they're going to play a half. And if they're playing a half, you probably don't want them in your fantasy lineup. So that's the case with the Texans. I would be shocked if they play all 4 quarters to start. You know, their seat is locked.
Yeah.
They have nothing to gain or lose.
The counterpoint, if you play C.J. Stroud for half of a game this year, you get 6.8 fantasy points.
Oh, that's a good point.
He's averaging 13.6 points per game this year.
It's unreal.
Don't need it.
Doesn't didn't get to hit the ceiling we wanted as a passer, and doesn't run much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as it pertains to the Eagles, look, I get it. As an Eagles fan, I'd love to see Barkley get there. I was kind of hoping they would play the starters for a series or two, and maybe he rips off a 70-yard run, and they're like, all right, let's get it, and then we'll rest everyone. But on the other hand, you know, and Saquon's good about this, they're going for a ring here. They want to win the Super Bowl, and keep this in mind, they had a very early bye week, too. So they haven't been off for a while. They played every week all the way through this. You know,
well, it's been a long season, too. They traveled to freaking Brazil for a game.
Yes, yeah.
Like, this team's been all over the map. I think it's a reasonable decision.
Agreed.
It's not just Saquon that's going to be sitting. There's going to be no Jalen Hurts, as he as well is not out of the concussion protocol. So he's already been zeroed out of the projections, Mike Clay. So without Jalen Hurts, I do believe that you've done the same thing with both the pass catchers as well, and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, right?
Yep, they're out. Dallas Goedert should be back for the playoffs, but he's not going to play this week either.
So all the
starters. Most teams, the other 4 teams for the most part, unless they've been specifically ruled out, I have them projected for like a quarter. Yeah. But so I took all the Chiefs guys out because we know they're going to be inactive. Carson Wentz is starting. Same thing with the Rams, I believe, for them all the way. But like Houston, I have playing about a quarter or so. And then Buffalo, I don't. Did they say Mitch is? I don't know if I zeroed them out
They
yet.
said Josh will play a very small
Right,
amount
so I have them
of
at
the
like
game.
a quarter as well. Yeah.
It sounds like that might even be generous. One thing to note, and this is just sort of a small practical matter, is that you can only rule 6 players plus an emergency quarterback inactive for each game. So if you are watching inactives come out at 11:30 and it says that Saquon Barkley is active, because they have Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert and Lane Johnson and I don't know, whatever, Darius Slay, who's 34. I'm just making up names. You know, somebody you can only choose 6.
Someone's got to be on that.
So you're going to see guys who are going to be active, but they might be active. A.J. Brown might be active and wearing an Eagles sweatshirt on the sideline. So just, a small thing there. I don't know whether our game will acknowledge those players as out if they're active but not going to play. So I'm just giving you guys a little bit of a procedural thing here as you get ready for the week ahead. But truthfully, for the purposes of your roster, you can drop Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts and all those players for this week anyways.
Yeah, you're not using them here in week 18.
Go stack up on other players. So you mentioned Saquon, Jalen Hurts out, and let's keep rolling through the rest of the news.
Yeah, let's talk about Tua, because it looks like Tua, the sense that I'm getting is he's not going to play this week, which means it would be another week with Snoop Huntley under center. And this comes kind of down to the conversation we had earlier this week, Field. Dolphins still do have something to play for.
Yep, they do.
So you're looking at Devon Achane, Tyreek Hill, Jonnu Smith, and Jalen Waddle. Is there any reason, in spite of the fact that Snoop Huntley does not instill as much confidence in some of these guys, are you benching Devon Achane with what he's been at the running back spot?
It's going to be hard to do just because there are so many other players that you won't have at your disposal normally, so he will be in my starting lineup. But, yeah, I'm prepared for the possibility of another dud like last week, right? And I think the weather contributed to last week a little bit as well. It was a low-scoring game in which the Dolphins basically said, let's just get out of here with a win.
Yeah.
So you saw a good amount of Raheem Mostert where they were basically trying to.
That's right.
Every drive was like, let's just chip away like 4 more minutes off the clock. It wasn't as much about like, can we score a touchdown? That would have been nice, but it was like, we're 4 minutes closer to leaving here.
Yeah.
So, weather shouldn't be as much of an issue this week. That being said, Devon Achane has a decidedly lower ceiling without Tua. We have seen that over the course of 5 separate games this year.
Yeah, I agree. I dropped them about 10 spots in the ranks, so I'm with you. Huntley did play pretty well in that game.
Much
in fact,
better this time around.
Tyreek Hill caught every target that went his way, all 9, so that helps you feel a little bit better about him. The problem is Tyreek Hill, the only Dolphin over 41 receiving yards in that game.
Johnny Smith got saved by that touchdown late.
Yeah, he sure did. And remember, Huntley totaled 290 yards and had 0 touchdowns in the first 2 games that he played earlier this season. So there's definitely some pause here, and you'll notice if you were following the projections for the Dolphins, Tyreek dropped a good 10 or so spots. It helps that he had a huge target share last week. Waddle's still in there. We'll see his injury status. And then Jonnu dropped a few spots as well, though he's been pretty good with Huntley. I would still start Achane, but you're right. There's more risk than usual.
I would definitely not feel as good about it, but I'm still starting Achane. I'm still starting Tyreek Hill. I'm still starting Jonnu. Doesn't mean I feel super great. Yeah, and I'm out on Jalen Waddle this week with Snoop Huntley at quarterback.
I just have an idea as I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, geez, who are you going to play left, right, center? We should get 10 of us at ESPN, and we should do a draft. And we should draft a 1-week team. I know it's basically daily fantasy.
That's
but without the pricing. I mean, like, who goes first overall? Probably like Justin Jefferson or Jahmyr Gibbs or something like that, right?
Well, the first 10 picks are all Lions and Vikings.
That's
right?
fine. Yeah, but my point is that like that'd be kind of a fun way to play Week 18.
Bengals got something to play for, right? Steelers
I guess
got
Jamar
something to play
Chase, yeah,
for.
that'd be good. That'd be kind of a fun Week
Or
18
just long
exercise.
shots, or just long shots too. Like
If you have to be
I'll take
available.
Cody Schrader, and everyone's like, "Who is that?" Like,
He's been on the roster all year, just sitting there. Hasn't played. I don't think he's played a single snap. Anyways, yes. So
That'd be fun.
yeah.
Yep. I think Justin Watson might be a guy I'd throw a dart at if I had to. Although this week, when you look at the Kansas
but again,
City
we
Chiefs,
don't know. He's a vet. Like,
I was
going to
say,
he's a key part of that offense.
I have
don't
no
know.
idea when I look at Kansas City, other than the fact that there's no Patrick Mahomes, likely going to be no Travis Kelce. There's not going to be any of the major pass catchers that you're there for. Mike, is there anybody that you have in the projections here in Week 18 that you would feel
For the
confident
Chiefs?
starting for the Chiefs?
Maybe Justin Ross leads the team in
He
targets.
gets
He's off the
promoted,
practice
right?
squad. Yeah, I mean,
there's a couple guys who play special teams for the Chiefs at wide receiver.
Nico Remigio.
Nico Remigio, they're a kick returner who I think you'll see a lot of, and the Chiefs are certainly a prideful group. And by the way, I mean we're talking about like arguably the best roster in the NFL, so their bottom half is better than most bottom halves.
Sure.
But the Broncos will have nobody to blame but themselves if they can't punch their ticket into the playoffs come Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, you're exactly right. But yeah, I think that one of the problems with the Chiefs receivers, sorting them out, is they're all veterans. It's like they're not going to be like, okay, DeAndre Hopkins usually doesn't play, and he's like our wide receiver 4, so we'll let him play a full role in 8 weeks. Like he's not going to play. Juju Smith-Schuster is like fifth in line. He's not going to play a lot.
I think you'll see a lot of like multiple tight end sets, right?
Of course, yeah. Oh, yeah.
A lot of Jared Wiley and Peyton Hendershot.
Yeah. He's on IR. I don't know if he'll play.
I thought Wiley was back. Oh no, he tore his ACL in practice, right?
I don't think he's going to be active. I haven't seen any reports that he's coming back, so I don't think he'll be there.
Maybe he got hurt
But
during
nonetheless, your point stands.
My point was players like that are likely to. My apologies. I got to study the Chiefs tight end depth chart better going forward. But Carson Wentz is going to start, so we know that.
Yep, know that. And I'm benching their tight end 1 in Noah Gray, also benching their tight end 2 in Travis Kelce.
I had to get one more zinger off. I tell you what, though, dude, he came through for me in the championship of
Travis
my Dynasty
Kelce?
League. So
He did.
I'm saying only good. I mean, I say a lot of good things about him in general, but he has got a
Also,
special place in my
the
heart.
leading vote getter for the Pro Bowl, the fan vote here in 2024.
Believe it or not, he's very popular.
Yeah.
Who's this?
Travis
Travis
Kelce.
Kelce.
Oh, Kelsey, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm shocking. I wonder why that is.
I was shocked
Must
when
be
I saw
something
where some of the
personal.
Lions ended up on that poll. The idea that Jahmyr Gibbs had more votes than Saquon Barkley, who had 2,000 rushing yards this year. Pro Bowl is always a funny thing when you just look at like how invested are some of the teams' like fandom.
My favorite part was this. You're right on this, the fan voting, but this cracked me up. It's the Pro Bowl games now. So back in the day, the value of alternates was pretty significant because a lot of players would withdraw due to injury. Then the two teams that played in the Super Bowl, when the game was played in between the Super Bowl and the conference championships, would take away all of their players.
Yep.
Usually the teams that make the Super Bowl have very good rosters, so you might have seen 10 guys drop out from the Pro Bowl. They still have alternates this year. And a lot of teams were announcing their alternates. Really good player. And a fantasy football advocate, by the way, DJ Reader for the Lions.
Yes.
The 7th alternate at defensive tackle in the NFC.
All right.
They actually still said, did you guys see his tweet?
All right.
No, I didn't.
So Monday night at like 11:59 p.m., this is great. I should have pulled this for the show. DJ Reader from the Lions tweeted something to the effect of like, we finally did it for the first time ever. I'm a fantasy football champ. And I think someone responded like, you better have Jahmyr Gibbs. And he was like, you're damn right I got Jahmyr Gibbs.
That's so good.
So shout out to DJ Reader for getting the job done.
He's
he's
an
awesome.
underrated player.
He has been for so
one long. One of the guys
yeah.
I love that the Lions pick. Like,
Yeah.
they needed
Yeah.
help inside. It was such an underrated, star defensive tackle. I'm with you for sure.
And he's a fantasy football guy. That makes him, he should be, I've got him as first alternate.
Because of that.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
absolutely.
first alternate in my heart, Field Jason.
Yeah, he's an actual Pro Bowler in my heart. So
By the way,
anyways,
we've talking about these backups who are going to play this week. We were talking about a Pro Bowler earlier. Snoop Huntley.
yeah, baby.
Former
right.
Pro Bowler. That's right.
You know what?
When like every quarterback was out in the entire.
Do you know why I will never forget that? Is I know we're sort of off the rails, but
Yeah,
it's
I know
Week
where you're
18,
going with
people.
this. Yeah.
5 minutes. The last tweet that I put up before I destroyed my shoulder
Yep.
Yes.
was one of the members of our great event at the Bahamas.
Agreed.
The Baha Mar was
Yeah.
wearing the Snoop Huntley Pro Bowl jersey. And I was like, I need to take a picture of that and post it on social media.
You did. I remember.
5 minutes later, my arm is completely
5 minutes later, you were
Jacked up.
You were Huntley was replacing you. You needed an alternate for the
Hey, you know what, though?
the event.
Did I return to the
You
The
did.
event that night?
You did.
That night, baby. We played through pain. I'm a hockey
did.
player. All right, let's move forward here.
All right.
I'm going to stop. Let's just get through the news.
Are we still? Yeah, we're talking about the news, right? By the way, I wanted to mention this. Carson Wentz last year, same thing. Week 18, filled in for the Rams for Stafford and had a huge game. He had like 27 fantasy points against the Niners. However, they were all playing their backups as well. So he'll be playing against starters in this one for the Chiefs. And again, Denver highly motivated, winning in. And if they lose, probably out. I mean, they could still get in if the Bengals and Dolphins lose, but that's not a sure thing. So.
This is not the end of the season that we wanted, unfortunately, from James Conner. We were so pumped for him being able to not miss any games all season long, and then here at the very end of the season, unfortunately, James Conner was placed on injured reserve, which means we got some Michael Carter and DJ Dallas ahead of us. Mike, how are you looking at this from a projection standpoint? Is it going to be Michael Carter, the clear number one, with a little bit of DJ mixed in, or do you think it's going to be more 50-50 here?
Yeah, I still have to update this one because Trey Benson also on IR, so it will be Carter and DJ Dallas. Yeah, Carter is going to steal the show here. We saw that last week. They're going to lean on him. He's come up and done a nice job. So he's the guy. He could be in for a big week. He really should. DJ Dallas will be changing pace, but Carter should be pushing 15-plus carries, and we know he could catch the ball as well. Remember, the heartbeat of the New York Jets just a few years ago.
I remember that, yes.
You know what's funny is that if you looked at DJ Dallas and you looked at Michael Carter, you would say one of those guys is the workhorse back and one of those guys is the change of pace back. In this case, it's the exact opposite, right?
Yeah.
Michael Carter is your conventional change of pace back. Who will be the lead back for Arizona? Small thing here, but it sucks for James Conner to go on IR.
It does.
But the reality is that Michael Carter getting a bump to the active roster for this week is a big time. It's a nice paycheck raise for him as well. So for James, it does not change his bottom line at all. He wasn't going to play in the game. His salary is not affected by this whatsoever. But in the case of a guy like Michael Carter, it's maybe like an extra $40K in his pocket for this week, which you like to see guys like that rewarded. We will see a ton of players promoted from practice squads to active rosters by weekend.
Yes, sir.
Including the possibility of Daniel Jones being signed to the Vikings active roster, which would put him in play for a compensatory pick for Minnesota, who has only 3 of their own picks in next year's draft.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised with all these former high pedigree quarterbacks turning the corner later in their career. If he gets a 1 year, like that Sam Darnold contract, might not be 1 year, $10 million, but maybe not far off that. It's been working for other
1 year, $5 million with a chance to make it 15.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Another quarterback we're looking at here, unfortunately, in Week 18, Brock Purdy is going to be out this week for the San Francisco 49ers. Does sound like he avoided serious damage on that throwing arm, which is great. You'd love to be able to hear that. But without Brock Purdy, that means we're going to have the pastronaut, as you said earlier this week, Fields Yates, Josh Dobbs under center. When you're looking at this, I mean, it feels like they're still going to play their guys. I was looking earlier today. I was trying to figure out how much does it feel like the 49ers are going to go out there and play their guys with nothing to play for. I haven't seen anything suggesting that George Kittle or Debo or any of these guys are not going to be out there on the field.
I think we may have yesterday Kittle and Debo were both DMPs in practice. It's a new thing, I think, in the case of both of them. I think it's a back injury for George Kittle. It's a wrist injury for Debo Samuel.
I assumed it was just because George Kittle was old. I didn't think it was actually.
Yeah, and we'll see. Kittle has not missed, or has he played every game this season? No, I think he missed one, did George Kittle. But yeah, there's a chance, it sounds like, that they sit those guys.
Okay.
So I do think this might be a watered-down version of the 49ers. I kind of felt like Monday night
was it just those two, or was it also Juwan?
There were a bunch of guys who did not. Juwan, I think, was good to go, but there were a bunch of guys who did not practice yesterday for San Francisco, which is not amazing. I felt like kind of Monday was their I don't know, their parting gift to the season, right? Playing, arguably the best team in the NFL or second, whatever you want to call the Lions. Daniel would say the best, deservedly so. I think this week might be a little bit more of let's not get anybody hurt. That's a big part of our future.
Are we going to see some Ricky Pearsall then? I mean, is that like a back-to-back week?
Yeah, we have to keep an eye on that, but I think that was the difference for them last week. They thought, all right, we even really look, when Pearsall was activated the first few games, they used him quite a bit. Yeah. After that, he disappeared for like 6-7 weeks, and then they featured him last week. So maybe there's more of that. But I generally think what I've seen in the past is certain teams will rest players if they're in playoff position, but usually eliminated teams, if the guys are healthy, they play. They play in full. So that would be my expectation for most players you're considering. If they're healthy, they're active. There's no reports they're going to be limited. They're going to be at full.
All right, so let's do our Week 18 start or sit conversation around some wide receivers. The very first one we got is Ricky Pearsall, who is coming off of a huge game last week against the Detroit Lions. 8 catches, 141 yards, and a touchdown. Good enough for 28.7 fantasy points. Starting or sitting here in Week 18?
I'll make it simple on my end. If there's no Debo Samuel and nor George Kittle, I'm playing Ricky
Correct.
Pearsall.
Agreed.
If there is, I hope that he has a monster performance, but we do know that the offense, as Mike said, has had weeks where they've just made him invisible. And if you have those two guys, plus Isaac Guerrero practiced fully yesterday, plus Juwan Jennings, he's going to be a likelier sit for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I have him right now 62nd in my rankings of wide receiver. Remember, no Brock Purdy as well. So you're dropping.
Astronaut.
Yeah, you're dropping it down to Josh Dobbs, who, like, I think he was a good story last year. Remember, he made multiple starts for 2 different teams, Arizona and Minnesota. But
yeah.
So
But remember
good
that
story,
in
but
the offseason, it was like he got like a 1-year, $1 million contract.
Yeah,
We're like,
yeah.
oh, maybe.
It's like after everything that he did, I was surprised.
Yeah,
that
but the production wasn't that good. There's a reason a team like Arizona traded him away to Minnesota, and then they were like, we have to. And then they started him a couple times. They're like, nah, Nick Mullins, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, keep that in mind. It might not be the best offensive game here. Arizona getting better defensively. They've been fine against receivers and quarterbacks this season. And also, like again, he totaled 28.7 fantasy points and 13 targets in over 6 games prior to last week. So. Yeah. They did try to feature him. So I guess it's a long way of saying, like, yes, if all those other guys are out and it's just Pearsall and him, fine. But if these other guys play, it's going to be harder to trust them.
Yep. It's a pretty easy if-then statement then, because we'll be able to know whether or not Debo and George Kittle and these guys are going to roll. And if they don't, then you feel good to be able to throw them in your lineup.
I'll tell you what, though. The one thing I'll say, though, is made me feel pretty good about next year. And I know you talked about it the other day, but we're going to see how that shakes out. I don't know that Debo will be there, but, we'll have Kittle. We'll have Juwan Jennings, who seems like, he's come out like he's a good player. He's going to be part of that offense. And Ayuk's going to be coming off the ACL, so there's real room for Pearsall. There's real room for what's the contract allow that? He got
he got an extension, but he could be. I think it's safe to say that things were not. Is the word copacetic correctly used here?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that things were not copacetic when he was healthy.
Yeah.
So wouldn't surprise me if he was the subject of trade rumors.
We did not mention this on the show in part because we do fantasy football, not real football. But is this one of those spots where I saw that the Browns added 2 void years to Deshaun Watson's contract, potentially with the ability, hopefully, for them to maybe make a move? Is that the similar kind of thing that you would think maybe for the 49ers is like if they're going to be able to potentially move Brandon Ayuk, who they just signed to a huge deal, you're going to have to find some way to be able to make it so that the team can actually make it.
There are ways in which you can tweak the deal a little bit. Not to get super deep into the weeds.
I love deep into the weeds.
The Saints did this last year around this time, where they converted what was supposed to be just a roster bonus for Marshawn Lattimore into an option bonus. This is totally minutia, guys. I get it. If you're bored by it, my apologies. But if you pick up a roster bonus, if you pay that roster bonus, it hits the cap that year right away. So let's say it's for $10 million. Well, in the minute it's due, and usually roster bonuses are due early in March, $10 million is on that team's cap and it goes nowhere. By the way, the cash is paid out to the player. An option bonus is slightly different. The player still earns the same amount. It just hits the salary cap divided by the number of years left on the deal. So let's just say that there's a $10 million option bonus and there's 4 years left on the contract. Well, yeah, the guy might count $2.5 million against your cap, but there's $7.5 million that somebody else could inherit. So if you see a team change a roster bonus into an option bonus, it's often a sign that they're at least pondering the possibility of moving a player that offseason.
Okay. Yeah. I love these. I appreciate it. I know this is not fantasy football, but just in looking ahead to next year in 2025, we're going to see some movement here.
We'll see it. Every year there's always a couple of deals that get done right before the end of the regular season that help sort of tell the story of the upcoming offseason.
All right, back to Week 18 here.
Yeah, let's just rip through these names. I'm going to continue to categorize them as start, sit, don't really know.
Perfect. All right, then when we're looking at Marvin Mims, who crushed it, 2 touchdowns last week. Fields, Yates, Broncos have something to play for. Start or sit for Marvin Mims?
He's still going to be closer to a sit for me, but he's moving his way up. Really impressive player. Obviously has huge play upside. He's had 2 massive catches on prime time or standalone game slots in over the past 3 weeks. So a lot of talent here, an interesting guy for dynasty purposes as well. But I'm not saying this is exactly the same as Ricky Pearsall, but he has also had games where he has been invisible in a Denver offense that has been mostly whole, as we expect it to be this week.
Yeah, and like Pearsall, we haven't seen a big difference in playing time. He still is maxed out at a 48% snap share and 48% route participation. However, when he's on the field, they're getting the ball to him more. And by the way, he had 8 targets last week, a career high. He caught them all.
Yeah.
9 touches, also a career high. So it was good to see a big day from him. Remember, the Chiefs are resting a lot of players.
Yep.
And Mims is going to be out there. So there's risk here because Sean Payton is not committed to him, and he's still not a full-time player. But there's enough here. I have him wide receiver 36. I think he's startable. In
Trending up, yeah.
Low end flex. Very low end flex.
And keep in mind, people, I know this is obvious, but just to remember, like wide receiver 33, when it's like there is no, for example, and there's no Khalil Shakir and Puka Nacua. I don't know why I started with Shakir.
Yeah, but you got to start replacements.
There's no
I mean,
A.J.
he's
Brown.
like,
There's no
if you're
Devontae
like,
Smith.
wow, I lost like all these star players, like Mims is perfect for that. Like he's one of those few guys you could get off waivers who could put up 25. You know,
I'm just saying that number, like wide receiver 36, you said, would be lower if it's not like the replacement for Puka Nacua is automatically going to go to wide receiver 3 where Puka Nacua.
Oh, really? You know, Jordan Whittington, wide receiver 3?
I've got him as wide receiver 7.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
Got
Sorry.
it.
Duh.
That makes sense, obviously.
He was
without
limited
Puka
in
Nacua.
practice yesterday.
Are you playing Puka's backup in Cooper Kupp this week, Mike Clay? Because
He's Whittington's backup at this point, I think. Like
for the last 5 weeks, he's had under 5.5 fantasy points. I know a bunch of the other Rams are going to be sitting. I'm assuming.
No, he's going to sit too. Yeah, we don't really need to talk about him because he will probably be inactive, I would guess. Yeah.
All right.
What do you think? And by the way, if you see the rankings page right now and you're like, wait, you have him ranked? We'll get there.
Yeah,
Yes.
This is where every day we're chipping away at it. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm keeping them as updated as I possibly can, but I do have a couple to chip off. I think Connor's the big one I haven't.
Are we going to
Can
see?
I throw a dynasty idea at you guys? Just a curious, and this is very random, but it's pertinent as I've thought about making this offer in a dynasty league. Travis Kelce or Cooper Kupp?
I know one or the other, just straight up like.
And
no
I
other
understand that
context.
most dynasty trades are like, would you rather Devon Achane or like Jahmyr Gibbs or something? But like Cooper Kupp, Travis Kelce, because I find that a lot of dynasty trades end up being like mid or later year players.
I think I think it's more likely you're going to get a starting caliber season out of Kelce.
Okay.
For maybe next year, other than Kupp. Now, I don't even know if he's going to be on the Rams, right? Like, do we know for sure? I know McVay fought to keep him, but, I mean, he's disappeared the last 3 weeks. So, I don't know. That is a tough call, though, because maybe Kupp comes back for one more year and has another big year, and maybe Kelce has 1 year as like a mid-range tight end 1, and that's that. That's interesting.
I'd rather have Travis Kelce given the island position. The idea that, like Mike's saying, like you might be able to have a top 12 guy at tight end where you only are starting one, whereas at wide receiver, I feel like I would be having that decision of would I rather have this potential up-and-coming wide receiver or old man Cooper Kupp that I start every week. I don't think it's the same way with Travis Kelce.
It's a league where I've got George Kittle as well, and the player that I'm considering, we're both like, have a real shot to win it next year. He doesn't have like a great tight end option.
Sure.
And so you're kind of wondering like, and I'm probably a little thin at wide receiver. Could be a mix. I don't know. I was contemplating making that trade offer, and before I did, I wanted you guys to tell me I wasn't nuts.
I don't think it's nuts.
There's no clear winner.
I just think at Kupp, I mean, look, he's in his 30s now. Like his ceiling is probably like an Adam Thielen type season, and we did see Thielen catch 100 balls last year, but he is a unicorn. Like that just doesn't happen.
I know.
It's not like Kupp's still crushing it. He was for a while, but he's just fallen off big time.
I mean, if Kupp hits that ceiling, it's because Puka is hurt and not playing. I mean, there's no way.
Not necessarily.
He's going to
not in that offense.
So that's the part that I wonder is like we've seen this happen. Like he just fell off the second half of the year. So that's one of the.
All right, last thing. That's the last time. So I really want to get to the top 25. So let's just do our 3 more star sits and then
we have time here. Yeah.
Mike, let me ask you this question. Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
Been all over the place. He's had some great weeks with Aaron Rodgers. He's had some less than great weeks with Aaron Rodgers. Is there a chance he's going to have a matchup against Jalen Ramsey this week?
Ramsey shadowed him when they played a few weeks ago, but Wilson did fine in that game against Miami. 114 yards and 10 targets. Ramsey wasn't on him all the time, but he was on him enough, and Wilson still came away with a good game. The fact is, right now, it's Aaron Rodgers to Devontae Adams. I mean, he's featuring him, and Wilson's clearly the 1B in that offense. Still, during the 7-game span where he's kind of fallen off since Adams took off, 7.9 targets per game. He does have a touchdown in 2 of his last 3. So at the end of the day, I mean, if you have Wilson, you're starting him, especially with all these guys that are going to sit this week.
I would agree.
All right, what about with the other New York football team? I think we're definitely playing Malik Neighbors, given everything that Malik Neighbors is.
We are.
Like, have we seen enough from Wan'Dale Robinson that here in Week 18 field with some of the other big-name wide receivers, is there enough volume here for you to even consider it?
You know, we always say, like, you got an elite quarterback like Drew Lock, you've got a chance to be
we
productive,
say it over and
right?
over.
Yeah, and he finishes, quarterback 2 last week?
I know, unreal. Out of nowhere.
Were you listening to Tuesday when I mentioned that he's the only starting quarterback in our Dynasty League that was available on waivers?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. That's unbelievable.
And I got
that is, what, 5 touchdowns?
.48 points from frickin' Aaron Rodgers in the championship game.
Unreal.
It cost me, but yeah, I know. But still, would have been a bludgeoning if I had Drew Lock and not Rodgers in my lineup there.
Yeah, but Wan'Dale does feel like the guy that's going to score 27 points in Week 18, right?
Yes.
Against the Eagles backups.
And then, you know what's going to happen is, let's play this out one step further. He gets 27 points in Week 18 after scoring a touchdown last week in a big game. And then during the offseason content, we're going to be talking about, like Wan'Dale Robinson, he was wide receiver 17 on the year last year. When it's like, well, he played every game. He had like 4 good games that he absolutely smashed, and then he had like 10 games of like complete and utter irrelevance.
Yep.
Yeah, he's got to come down to who their quarterback is next year. Because, remember, his second-round pick, like, he had he's going to finish top 10 in catches, I think, or
will,
top
yeah.
15. So there could be something. Anyway, that's an off-season topic. But nonetheless, I think this week he's heavy target share 4 weeks in a row. They're playing the Eagles backups. He's startable.
I think we do a little bit, and I am calling myself guilty of this, but I'd like to be a little more thoughtful this offseason when describing players because, like, when you're talking about Wan'Dale Robinson, like, people talk about it in a vacuum, like, oh, you've got him as wide receiver 36. Like, wow, you have him behind, and I'm just making this up, you got him behind Rashad Bateman or whatever, whoever the player you think of is, right? And it's like, what Wan'Dale Robinson, I believe, represents in future years and this year is, like, he's not the kind of player that I believe is ever going to reach like 1,250 receiving yards or 12 touchdowns. But it's like, if you're looking for a guy who you're powering through bye weeks and you need the potential for 6 catches for 42 yards, here's Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, he's going to be on that list of guys, like 2 of the favorite, like, there's always a list of boring late round flyers. Like this year, I feel like Cortland Sutton leads the list. Jacoby Myers was definitely the main example here, although he's
a graduate to a new level.
I know, he really has. And Darnell Mooney was that main guy this year, where it's like, man, his opportunity is good. This is a good player in a good situation, and he's panned out as well. So I feel like Wan'Dale might end up on that list of the guy you can get like in the 13th round next year, and you're like, hey, you know what? In a 12-team league, this guy might be on the flex writer every week. So
Let me ask you one last player here in Week 18. I said last week it was a very easy if-then statement.
Yeah.
If Jerry Jeudy had Jameis Winston, I was starting him. If it wasn't Jameis Winston, then I was not starting him.
I know.
Turns out he had 18 targets for 12 receptions last week.
And how many yards?
94 yards.
94 yards, 5.2 yards per target, which is perfect with what we talked about all last week with DTR, which is he has the lowest YPA in NFL history. And it was even lower last week.
Really
like,
did
it's
get worse.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's no reason he should be starting.
None.
All due respect to the
there
kid.
is a reason.
Yeah, well, there is a reason.
There is
He
a reason.
want a better
The
draft.
Browns want to make sure that they keep a top 3 draft
But that's
pick.
so unfair to the other players there. Like, look, I was hoping he would be better and showed progress, but it's not fair, man. Like, put Bailey Zappi in or Jameis. Come on, man.
Do you feel like you have enough? Did you see enough last week with 18 targets that you're like, well, shoot, if I've got Jerry Jeudy, I can play him again here in Week 18?
Yeah. This week, certainly.
Like, why
certainly
not?
a flex option because of
Against
that.
by the way, the Ravens have kind of tightened the screws.
They have. Yeah, much better.
Much better. Have you guys seen the line on ESPN Bet in this game?
No, what is
It's
it?
massive.
At last check, it was 18 at ESPN Bet.
18?
Yes, that's
18?
an unbelievable line. Yeah.
That would be
Wow.
the biggest of the season. I think I remember.
I think it's the biggest. ESPN Bet obviously is a year old, so 13 months old. So it's probably the biggest in the ESPN Bet NFL history. But I want to say, like, across several sports books, it's the biggest since like 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think earlier this season, the Lions were 14.5-point favorites over the Titans, and that was the biggest spread of the season. That number felt huge. 18 points is unreal.
Yeah, Lamar might not be playing this whole game, but not for rest reasons.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a Saturday game, and they have to win.
Yep, they have to win.
Saturday, there's 4 teams playing. They are all in the AFC North.
Yep. We're having the AFC North show. It's all on ESPN, of course, and ABC. Lamar could definitely be out in the third quarter, but it would probably be like what it was on Christmas Day when he was out in the third quarter after scoring nearly 30 fantasy points here. All good right there. I had a thought about this game, and I have totally.
Well, you
lost
think
where it
about
was.
that, by the way. This is probably the week where I know where each team's playing on the slate the best of any week.
Yeah.
Like every week I'm like, are they at 1 or 4?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, they're Sunday night. Oh, no, wait, they're playing Thursday. This week I have it like down because I've been looking at like, oh, wait, they play at 1. That could affect the Chargers at 4. Like,
Right.
you know, like the Steelers winning Saturday would affect if the Chargers are going to rest players. Sunday, like I've kind of been mapping all that out.
The only time I know is when it's like Rams 49ers and they have to play at the 4 p.m. slot.
Yeah.
Lions. I mean, it's going to come down Lions and Vikings.
Oh, this is
Sunday
what I
night
thought.
football.
That's
Yeah, that's the game of the
That's
game of the year, or certainly one of them.
right
yeah.
now.
Who are you watching with? Where are you watching it?
I'm going to watch it at the house.
Is that like do you prefer to watch alone in your home, or do you?
I prefer to watch games. Usually, I prefer to watch Lions games in a house rather than like a sports bar.
Yeah, I agree on that.
It's just more fun from that perspective.
You can
Mama
break
Dopp
stuff
and
at your
Papa
own house,
Dopp are
too.
coming down.
Oh, nice.
Right before the start of Wild Card Weekend, because we won't know. We couldn't. If we had locked up the 1 seed, I would have been like, just come in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
we
yeah.
didn't know what was going to happen, so they're coming down right before Wild Card Weekend. But
Who do you think will win?
Lions at home. Lions.
I'm taking the Lions at home. For
Wow,
what it's
really?
worth.
No way.
Yeah.
I'm picking the Lions. I have them like by 6 points, I think.
Yeah.
Here's my thought that I just stranded from my memory from a second, but now I want to reiterate it. We used to do a few years ago, we would do some off-season content for Focus surrounding coaching changes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it would be like, I don't know, like, hey, the Jaguars hired Gus Bradley. What does it mean for the quarterback there? It's like, he doesn't mean a damn thing. All right.
Correct, yeah.
Whoever hires Ben Johnson, it means a whole lot to me.
Yeah,
a whole lot to me.
you and I were talking about this before the show a little bit. Or were you going to expand on that first?
Well, I was
Okay.
going to say, if Caleb Williams has Ben Johnson as his head coach, it's going to be really hard to not have him as like a top 12 option next year.
Because
going
he's
into the
already
season.
like 12th, isn't he? Like he's hanging
Yeah,
around that.
yeah.
I am with you. You and I were talking about this before the show a little bit. Like trying to, I was like, how did I miss on the Vikings? And sometimes it's as simple as like, you just have great coaching, someone that just knows what they're doing, and we've seen that teams. I'm always too low on teams that just get to that next level with coaching, like Pittsburgh, for example.
Yep.
Minnesota has done it with Kevin O'Connell. I think he's proven himself with his development of Sam Darnold. So I'm with you. That I think was the missing piece, and why I was wrong on the Jets. That one's keeping me up at night. And this offseason, I'm like, how do I? It's always like, how do you get better? Like, what do you do better? Fantasy rankings, projections, NFL analysis, win totals for teams, and I'm like, man, like too low on the Vikings, how? Like too high on the Jets, how? Like that kind of stuff. I think it's the difference. Like
Yeah.
that coaching,
But also-
it's a hard thing to quantify, but it's a real thing.
How and maybe I'm wrong, but sure. Like, how dare you not have Sam Darnold, who was a cast-off from
But that's
every
what I
NFL
mean.
franchise, over a first-ballot
But
Hall
it's
of Famer,
happened.
Aaron
Like
Rodgers.
you see guys getting the most out of player. We've seen Kirk Cousins be great with Kevin O'Connell, and like he literally got that huge contract. He got benched in Atlanta. Like, and we thought coaching would be better in Atlanta, and it's had mixed reviews. We'll see, but I'm with you. It's one of them things that I have to figure out.
I gotta
always
say, I just
stressing
think-
about that kind of stuff.
I think it's selfish that the Minnesota Vikings couldn't let the Lions have one season. I mean, the Minnesota
Or
Vikings
the
have a
Packers.
Super Bowl. Like, they've at least won one. You couldn't give us 1 year where we didn't have to worry about having a 14-2 record and whether or not we're going to be the 1 seed
I
or
know,
the
you got
5
to-
Fair, but something I think like in defense of what Mike was kind of getting on himself for, and you were saying like, how could you not? And you were saying it
facetiously.
and correctly, because it's like, yeah, Sam Darnold has been incredible this year. Jared Goff is playing with virtually the same supporting cast as last year. And honestly, like, it's been a half season of Jared Goff being out of control.
Right,
Right,
it wasn't
like-
a full season from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, he's been amazing down the stretch, like one of the scariest guys to face. But like Sam Darnold could next year have a season that mirrors statistically what Jared Goff was last year, which was a great quarterback, and it wouldn't be some like complete stunner, would it?
No.
So yes, he is with the right coach to enhance his probabilities of being a great fantasy quarterback, but some things have also gone right here for Sam. Yeah, and the reality is that guys like that are just a little bit more vulnerable to duds than players like Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels, who also crush with their legs.
Yeah. For what it's worth, Jared Goff, 22 fantasy points in each of the 4 games since week 14. Basically, once the playoffs
Yeah,
started.
there's the MVP.
Like, he
at
was
least he's
crushing.
part of the conversation. Baker's got a strong case there.
Absolutely.
Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously, because of David Montgomery's absence, a couple others. But yeah.
Let me ask this then. I mean, looking ahead to 2025, Mike Clay, if we're
part
going to
of the
look at
year.
some rankings here, when you look at the top of the 2025 rankings, given where we're at? You've already got your way too early.
Yeah, I did a first run last week, and then I updated them yesterday and sent them out. So we're going to talk about them here now and on Sunday on FF Now. Yeah, I mean, look, it's really early here. Some of these are tougher to sort out than others. Some are easy, some are hard, and will depend on landing spots, coaching, all those sort of things. But especially certain areas, as we're about to get to. But yeah, I put together.
10.
I actually, believe it or not, right now here, I'm holding a 2025 rankings cheat sheet. So I have it.
Whoa.
It's pretty,
Wow.
It's pretty deal. I was kind of excited to print this out because I'm like, man, this is like, you got to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. Some people will be like, why are you wasting your time? You have to have a starting point, and then you continue to move these guys around. So yeah, it's kind of exciting to get that first look at what drafts will look like next season.
Is it true that you're going to have Jamar Chase all the way at the top because of the fact that right now he's third in total fantasy points ahead of almost every other quarterback that's out there today?
Yeah, and part of that is what you do at running back, and if there's a clear-cut number one, which some people are like, oh, there is. It's Saquon Barkley, but we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I think Chase right now, based on what the damage he's done this season and his outlook for next year, which is still with Joe Burrow, and we'll see on T. Higgins, but they love to throw the ball in that offense, and even if they balance that out a little bit more, Jamar Chase is the real deal, heavily featured, great connection with Joe Burrow. Just feels like an easy first overall pick to me next year.
I think that next year, though, on paper, strikes me as the one where we're going to have the most thoughtful discourse about player that could go number one overall.
Yeah, there's definitely candidates.
I would say of those 10 players, I don't have a major gripe with anything that Mike wrote there.
Those 10 players, just so that we can listen for the people listening at home, we got Jamar Chase at 1, Bijan at 2, Justin Jefferson at 3, Saquon at 4, and Jahmyr Gibbs rounds out the top 5, 6 through 10. Mike has Amon-Ra, Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, and Nico Collins as top 10 for next season.
My contention would be that 5 players, but not the first 5 in Mike's order, may generate some player one overall buzz. Jamar Chase, I think, is the leading favorite.
Definitely.
I think Bijan is probably second in that order. And then I think it's Justin Jefferson, Saquon Barkley because of what he did this year. And then I think Puka will also get some hype as well. Because if you look on the per-game basis, Puka, and I know you can't really do this, but take away the game he got injured, take away the game in which he fought somebody, and Puka's going to be there.
I mean, you kind of like that about him, right? He fought someone.
Yeah. If you take away those 2 games, I think he's like a tenth of a point ahead of or behind Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
The reason why I think Jahmyr Gibbs won't get that same conversation is just because David Montgomery, right? You're going to look at the games in which Monty was healthy, and you're going to see the consistency of Jahmyr Gibbs, which is 70-plus scrimmage yards in every game played this season. But you're also going to see the weeks in which there was the stat that we had going for a while where he was the only player with at least 12 fantasy points in every game amongst non-quarterbacks. And then it was like, but how many of those weeks was he like running back 1 through 5?
Yeah, it's like Kamara or Matt Forte kind of vibes where it's like, I'll finish 4th, but not first, which is great. But honestly, when you're picking a player in the first round, I'd be fine. Like, it's almost like I'm just taking Gibbs 1 because I know I'm getting that top 5 seed. Like, it's almost like that's okay. You're not gonna. You just don't want to lose in the first round. You don't want to. I agree. And not wanting to lose it with your first round pick is why Saquon Barkley is 4 and not 1 here. Look. I know I'm gonna get into this in the offseason. I'll give you a couple early numbers on this to give an idea and kind of start the conversation. We're gonna talk about this a lot in the offseason. But he has 378 touches. He's not going to play in Week 18. Still has 378 touches. That's 12th most among running backs since 2011. That is a big workload. 24 running backs who had at least 350 and played the next season. So I crossed off Le'Veon Bell because he didn't play the next season. Averaged 11.3 games the next season. Yeah. The 21 who played at least 6 games averaged a drop-off of 4.8 fantasy points. Only 2 of 20 increased their points per game. Derrick Henry, who's a unicorn, and Matt Forte did when he was earlier in his career. None of those 24 running backs that had all those touches finished first or second fantasy points the next year. Only 3 were top 5. Only 7 were top 10 the next season. This is a real thing. That heavy volume is almost impossible to repeat the next season at a high level. And it's just, you can pick apart all these guys. And again, we're going to do it all off season.
Right.
But I am really concerned about this at Barkley going into his age 28 season. Yeah, it's a real concern for me.
I'd be surprised if the efficiency dropped dramatically for Saquon. I am just concerned about injury, which is probably something that applies to all players. And the only reason why I say that is I think about some of the guys that fit into that category of 350-plus or more touches. And sometimes the efficiency dropped because it was like Josh Jacobs on the Raiders, right? Where it's like you're playing in a bad ecosystem. The ecosystem is so ideal for Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, for that matter, to repeats. Henry is a different risk because while he is maybe one of one in terms of physical fitness, he is also at a different age bracket than Saquon Barkley. He's got him by a few years in the NFL. But save this thought, and it's probably going to go by the wayside within like 6 weeks. But I'm starting to feel this stronger and stronger as I get further into my draft analyst career on the Real Draft front at ESPN. Is that last year I remember having some spirited conversations with people about certain players in the draft, because there was a time in which it was like, should Brock Bowers go like 4th overall in the real NFL draft? Like, does he deserve conversation for the Chargers at 5th overall last year when they took Joe Alt instead? And it was like, well, no, you can't use a top 15 pick on a guy like that who, plays a position where the NFL does not value it at the same level. And it's like a year into that conversation, what I realized is that, like, on the great players, just don't waste that much energy on it. Saquon's a risk because he can get hurt, and because of what Mike just laid out from an efficiency standpoint, I'm going to try to be a bit more passionate about the guys that I have, like, 21st versus 31st than I do the 4th versus 7th. I love Puka Nacua. I love Saquon Barkley. I'm going to be fine with either of those guys in round 1 next year.
I love Jahmyr Gibbs for what it's worth, and the idea that Jahmyr Gibbs has 16 touches this year. I didn't have that on my bingo card. If you told me there was a Lions running back with 16 touchdowns, I would have been like, oh, David Montgomery found the end zone a bunch. I could totally see that coming. But instead, both of them just have double-digit touchdowns. The thing that I love about Jahmyr, out of these other guys, for me, is just the fact that he's a top 10 running back even with David Montgomery. But if anything happens to his backfield mate, he vaults up to a top 3 guy pretty easily. Which is,
it's almost like he's got the anti-Devon Achane factor working for him, right? It's like, if things are normal, this guy's a top 10 back. But if like a factor that has come into play in each of this player's first 2 seasons comes into play, Jahmyr Gibbs goes from like RB8 to RB like 1 by himself, whereas like Devon Achane goes from like RB5 to like RB20 if 2 was not available.
That's crazy.
I'm with you for sure. Like that they're both used as a rusher and a receiver as well for Gibbs, and I think that applies to Robinson too. Who the reason he's ahead of Barkley is that, first of all, he's been awesome the last couple of months. More involvement now. This hasn't been the case the last month. His receiving has dropped off, but we know what he's capable of in the passing game as well for Atlanta, and also what he's going to be 5 years younger than Saquon Barkley. So I feel like he's more likely to build on what he's done this season, whereas Barkley might be hard to repeat. And by the way, Robinson, his touch total, not going to be far off Barkley after this week, assuming he plays which he will. They're going all out for a win. Not going to be far off. So that's a little bit of a concern as well. But again, I'm going to have no issue going wide receiver in round 1. You shouldn't, especially with a guy like Chase or Jefferson or Amon-Ra. Yeah, I mean, CeeDee Lamb was a candidate for 1st overall this year, and he's sitting there at 8. I mean, Malik Neighbors could lead all receivers in fantasy points next season. I mean, you're just loaded with first-round talent.
I think that was my only question was Malik Neighbors. Is like, was there any quarterback concern with you putting him inside the top 10 here, Mike?
Get better, right?
No, it has to be better than this year, and he was led the NFL in targets and target share as a rookie. And if you look at players with 160-plus targets, not just rookies, 160-plus targets in a season over the last decade, the worst player is Deontay Johnson, and it's a sizable drop from him to the next best. Like, it is all superstars. I mean, that is a pretty good indicator that this guy is going to be an elite receiver for a long time. So I feel great about his situation. Just, that's unreal. You lead the NFL in targets as a rookie. Here he is going into Week 18. Yes,
and they should keep him busy this week.
Yes. Yep. All right, let's look at positions 11 through 20 for 2025. Speaking of elite wide receivers, Brian Thomas Jr. comes in at 11.
I thought on him in a second.
Then A.J. Brown, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, and the aforementioned Devon Achane rounds out the top 15. 16 through 20, Josh Jacobs, who got a ton of work this year for the Packers. Christian McCaffrey, going to be a very interesting conversation in 2025. Bucky Irving as 18, JSN at 19, and Kyron Williams at 20. Field, knowing this is Mike's list, what kind of stands out to you about 11 to 20 here?
The running backs becomes really, really difficult there. It becomes super tough.
I'll comment on that in a second.
Yeah, I mean, Breece Hall, you could easily make the case, belongs lower than all those players you have there, right? Like, I think right now, if you ask me, between Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Devon Achane, Christian McCaffrey, Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, Kyron Williams, I might prefer Breece Hall least out of all those guys.
Interesting.
There's a case to. And I know that, like, he was the supernova player last year, right? He was RB2 last season, so he was incredible.
Yeah.
So much, though, is dependent in the case of Breece Hall on the Jets offseason.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I'm kind of being a little conservative here. I mean, maybe it's a little aggressive, but I still believe in the talent of this player. And again, we've seen it. We saw it last year, what he can do.
He's amazingly talented, yeah.
So I'm still kind of buying into that, but you're right. He's one that could move up, maybe up, perhaps down based on what happens in the offseason. I do have 2 running backs here who are under, 195 pounds, which makes me a little nervous. I'll tell you what.
Irving and Achane, yeah.
Yeah, Devon Achane, the circumstances were just perfect for him to have a big year this year, but I'm a little nervous about him based on how dependent he was on Tua and that screen pass. I mean, you take that screen pass away, this was a disastrous year for him. And then Bucky Irving, same kind of thing. He's small, and when they've given him big workloads, he's gotten injured this year too. But the level of play for them, and maybe it's kind of a new era in the NFL, is why I feel a little better about them, at least at this point in the offseason.
Tell you what, Mike, I'm proud of you for coming around on this, because I asked you at some point during the season, I said, when you are thinking ahead to the offseason, and you're thinking about players who are so dependent upon their quarterback, like the Dolphins are, like Devon Achane is, do you feel like that's going to adjust your ranking? And you kind of just conceded that it did.
Being dependent on
Tua, there is 2 decided, Tua, maybe the Dolphins this offseason are more aggressive in filling their backup quarterback role because they've seen what a decided drop they get. But if they come back next year with a relatively nondescript quarterback too, then I'm going to be more concerned about Devon Achane than I am other players, because if Tua misses half the season, you have a player who is, at least based off of this year, from a results standpoint, unusable.
Yeah, I think range of outcomes is definitely something to consider. There's so many things to consider, though, with these guys. But again, I am nervous about it, not even for that reason, just because of the way he's built and how he got his fantasy points this season. It just makes me a little bit nervous, and kind of similar for Irving, just with his frame, But that's the question you have to ask yourself. Do you believe that these guys can sustain this at this size and have Achane or Kamara or, sort of seasons going forward? Even like Matt Forte was a guy that never really referenced him twice today, but not a big touchdown scorer often.
Yeah.
He did a lot as just a reliable, a lot of catches, enough carries sort of season. And maybe that's the nature of the NFL now. And by the way, I want to mention another guy here, Kyren Williams. Again, he's right on that cusp. He's not going to play this week, so he's at the very bottom. But I mentioned, what was my stat? 350 plus touches. He is 350. So he's right on that cusp and has 2 years now of high-end production, fairly healthy. Had an IR stint last year, but healthy all this year. But I think that it's going to be like the Cook-Madison backfield where, and I don't always say this because oftentimes you don't, other people should still be interested in Blake Corum next year because of Kyron's workload the last 2 years. But I feel like if you take Kyron next year, you definitely want Corum. And again, because it's straightforward. It's not always straightforward to get the insurance back, but as long as the ADP is not out of control, that's one of them backfields you're like, it makes sense here. It's rare it makes sense, but it makes sense here to get Blake Corum with Kyron next year.
2 quick thoughts before we get into the last 5 players, 21 through 25. 1, Brian Thomas Jr. was, in my opinion, the biggest Pro Bowl snub. I know that it's just an exhibition, but I believed he deserved to be in over Zay Flowers.
100%.
Sorry, Zay, I think that was, more catches, yards, and touchdowns.
Wild, yeah.
That, to me, with far inferior quarterback play, Zay's an incredible talent, but I thought Brian Thomas Jr. was a very worthy Pro Bowl selection, so shout out to Jaguars fans who feel the same way. And then second of all, I want to be the first person to say this because everybody's going to have the exact same thought. If Christian McCaffrey's ADP hovers around where Mike has him in the ranks right now, he'll be the most popular player. Everybody have the same thought. I want Christian McCaffrey at cost because let's be honest. Christian McCaffrey, if he's healthy, is better than everybody else on this list.
Yes, I agree 100%. He will most likely be a first-round pick if everything's clear and he's healthy. I did bump him a little bit just based on that risk going into the offseason. We don't know. And, we have to figure out in the offseason, if you take CMC, who you drafting late? Garendo, Jordan Mason?
I'm just going to follow Adam Schefter on Twitter.
Whatever he does.
Whatever he does in the War Room League.
I think it's Garendo.
I think it's Garendo.
I think it's Garendo as well. But, I'm with you. That one, he was one of the hardest players to rank because no doubt he could be first overall next year, or it could be just he's done. But by the way, he's going to be 29. I think he is a year or 2 left.
I agree, and they're coming out for blood next year. They're coming out for blood. They really are.
Yeah, I think we will have him ranked higher than this.
I got one question before we move on, and then we'll look at 21 through 25 here. But in our YouTube chat, one of the questions that came up was, how you feeling about potential 0 RB next year, Mike? Have you started to look ahead at some of your draft strategies based on where you have your running back situation kind of filled out at the top?
I think it's always fine. If as long as you load up at the other positions, it's totally fine. But these aren't the guys you're getting if you're going zero
No.
RB. But we saw a lot of, you could have waited this year because of where guys like Alvin Kamara was going, right? Like he was one of my favorite targets this year in the 4th round, and which was odd for me because he's an older back. But those guys started to fall to a place where you're like, man, I could just skip running back and still get starters a little later. Kyron Williams obviously fell. So
James Conner, David Montgomery, there was a
100%.
bunch of guys.
So I think you could certainly pull that off. But again, it's the same as any year. If that's your strategy and you want to attack receiver early and then go cheaper running back, that's fine. One thing I do see, we'll see some regression to the mean next year, is more running back injuries. We've seen them the last couple of weeks, but the position was healthy all year long. That's not going to be as strong of the case next year. It's just the reality of the situation. So, your Trey Bensons and Blake Corums and those kind of guys are going to get more run next year. It's just the reality.
Yeah.
Of the
Do you know where you had James Cook at in this list? I was surprised. James Cook leads the NFL. He's not. I don't see him. When we get to 25, I don't have him in here, but he leads the NFL in touchdowns.
He's 26, RB 11 right now.
There you go.
Yeah, but his expected touchdown total is like 8.
So he's way over his head.
Yes, and those guys always come back to earth the next year. It's just money in the bank.
Does he really lead the NFL in total touchdowns? James Cook?
James Cook has 17, more than any other running back or wide receiver in the NFL.
Dang, I didn't realize that. He also was not named to the Pro Bowl, and he was very upset about that this season.
Probably because he found the end zone 17 times and was like, I think I should be here, guys.
My rule in the Pro Bowl, though, is always this. If you're going to say someone's a snub, you got to remove somebody else.
Yes.
Right? So Brian Thomas Jr., I believe, deserved to be in over Zay Flowers, and I believe the Christian Gonzalez deserved to be in over Denzel Ward. Other than that, I thought it was a fairly representative list.
All right.
Those other guys are really talented, and they're great, but I just thought those two guys had superior seasons, in my opinion.
Let's look really quickly at positions 21 through 25 on Mike's way too early 2025 rankings.
Yeah.
At 21, we got Brock Bowers and then Trey McBride, 2 tight ends back-to-back.
Yeah, this was an interesting spot in the rankings here. And
tight end
I'll
1,
explain
tight
myself
end
here.
2. Number 23 is Josh Allen, first quarterback on this list. And then it's Lamar Jackson, the second quarterback on this list. And then old man Devontae Adams, you just can't quit him, Mike Clay.
Yeah, for now. That Rodgers to Adams connection, I'm just assuming for now that it's together. If it's not, we might have to change this up a little bit. I mean, Adams finished way up there in points per game again. Like, he had another great year. 32 years old, I think he'll have another good year. But this is where I started looking at tight end and quarterback. And my thought process here was tight end, we have Bowers and McBride, and then Kittle's not terribly far behind. I have him at 36 overall. But then it's like back to the old, like, a lot of question marks. You have Laporta, Njoku, Andrews, Kelsey, Hawkinson, Ingram. Like, it starts to be like, all right, those two, Bowers and McBride, they just feel like they really stand ahead. And then quarterback, I have 5 guys. I talked about this on FF Now Sunday. The most interesting question here is going to be like, do you go after one of the top 5 because they really stand above everyone else? And you saw Lamar, Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, and Joe Burrow. Yep. And then it's like, who's 6? Is it Mahomes? Is it Mayfield? And that list can go on for another 20 names. Like, you have so many guys. So I think quarterback, those 5 will be up a little higher, and then there's going to be a huge gap because I think if you miss those 5, you're just like, I'll just wait. Like, I'll get someone late. I'll take a rookie, whatever it is. But I feel like there's tiers here at tight end and quarterback, and that's why I have them higher.
Last thought on Devontae, and then we got to run. I know we have to go.
Well, time went fast.
I note that. Devontae is a super fascinating and I believe valuable dynasty player right now, and obviously redraft as well, because here's what I believe. If he's not with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, Devontae Adams has made enough money and been on too many losing teams recently, and at the age where he realizes he only has so many more years left, that I think he says to himself, screw it. I'm going to the AFC powerhouse, or NFC powerhouse for that matter, but it feels like the AFC is where you've got a higher saturation of great quarterbacks and fewer great receivers, right? I mean, that's why the 4th receiver in the AFC Pro Bowl was not, I mean, in the NFC it's ridiculous. Like, Malik Neighbors didn't even make the Pro Bowl. Like, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, one of those type quarterbacks. CJ Stroud, if he gets back on track. Even if the Chiefs don't even if the Chiefs do win the Super Bowl again this year, they might still say, well, we are missing a bona fide wide receiver. Well, maybe they don't feel that way with both Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, but I feel like Devontae Adams will land in a very fantasy-relevant standpoint.
I'm thinking about it now. Keon Coleman, Devontae Adams, Khalil Shakir, and Dalton Kincaid with Cook in the backfield. There you go. We're set.
That's the team that I have in mind. Yeah. It's like, if the Bills win it all this offseason, Devontae may say, yes, they got there. I want to go back there to make them the team that does it again.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I like it.
I digress.
I just feel like I could see him
with the Lions.
Yeah, playing with Amon-Ra and J-Mo and Sam Laporta, Jared Goff. By the way, Jared Goff, quarterback 6 on the season.
He's been awesome.
I mean, come on. We didn't ever see that coming. There's a lot of Mike Clay hate in our Michigan men chat because he's so out on Jared Goff. To be fair, doesn't utilize his legs hardly at all.
Yeah, I mean,
every single time he does utilize his legs, we get a text in our group. Yeah. Take that, Mike Clay. Look at the wheels on Jared Goff.
So is he QB6 next year? Or is he
Probably
QB
not.
Is he ahead of
27?
Baker Mayfield this season?
He is right behind him. Right now, it's Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff.
So Jalen Hurts is not.
Jalen Hurts is 7. He's right behind.
Oh,
him.
because of the game miss. Got it. Okay. I was thinking to myself like.
Per game, Jalen Hurts is
I'm sure.
still ahead of him.
Yep.
So anyway.
Last question that I have about this list. You had mentioned a little bit farther on down there, and then we'll get out of here. Do you know where you have Travis Kelce? Just way too early
Yes,
for
I have
2025?
him tight end 7, 79th overall right now.
Tight end 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, after those first few tight ends, it's like, might as well wait. It's a lot of the same. Again, very similar to quarterback.
I cannot wait to dive into our 2025 conversations. It'll
Me
be
too.
very fun. But
it was fun to start.
When we come back tomorrow, we're going to have just a little bit more, making sure that you're set for Week 18. All the things that you need to know. If there are any updates, we'll make sure that you have them. But for Field Yates and Mike Clay, my name is Daniel Dopp. Today's show was presented by Wingstop. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself. You deserve it. There's no football tonight.
College football.
So just enjoy the evening with your family, I guess, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Later.
See you. Bye.
I guess. Settle for family if you have to.